Just 48 hours ago, a crypto millionaire drowned off the coast of the Maldives. A man who once held millions in cold wallets now held nothing but salt water in his lungs. For 3 minutes, his heart stopped, and in that space between breaths, he saw everything. But what no headline will tell you, what no algorithm can decode, is what he brought back. Because as his spirit left his body, he encountered Jesus Christ, and Jesus showed him what's coming next. Not next month, not next year. The exact date, September 9th, 2026, a global market collapse. Not just financial, but spiritual. Nations will tremble. Empires will fall, but not without a warning. Before we go any further, pause, hit subscribe, ring the bell. This isn't just content, it's a calling. Comment your nation below, because tonight, intercessors are watching, and someone needs to pray for where you live.
My name is Daniel. I'm 38 years old. I made my first million in Ethereum back in 2017. I wasn't born into wealth. I built it through smart contracts, meme coins, staking protocols. I rode the volatility like a game. I founded 2 DeFi startups, spoke on blockchain stages in Dubai, Lisbon, and Seoul. My Twitter threads went viral. My face ended up on Forbes' next tech profit list. I lived like a king. Yachts in Croatia, sushi in Tokyo, 5 phones, 1 heart growing emptier by the month. Because I believed in algorithms, not angels, in Satoshi, not scripture, in self-sovereignty, not surrender. Faith, that was for the poor and the panicked, until the ocean pulled me under. What started as a quick dive off a rented catamaran ended in me gasping for air, thrashing in a current I couldn't escape, and watching my body float above me. I mocked the idea of God. I called Jesus a myth. But then I left my body, and the myth turned toward me, with eyes like lightning, and a voice that shook every lie I had ever built my empire on. And that's when it began. It was supposed to be a casual afternoon. The Maldives were paradise. Clear skies, warm tide, and a rented catamaran waiting just offshore. I'd snorkeled a dozen times before. This time felt no different, until it did. I slipped into the water, mask secure, fins on. The sea was smooth. The reef shimmered below me like a living tapestry. But then, a sudden cramp, deep below my ribs, sharp like a spear. I tried to stretch. Then I kicked. Nothing. Another kick. Panic. A rip current had taken hold of me. I surfaced to call out, but no one heard. The yacht looked far, too far, and that's when the tide pulled harder, like fingers around my ankles. I thrashed, swallowed salt. My chest tightened. My legs wouldn't respond. My mind screamed, but the ocean didn't care. It wanted silence. My eyes burned. The salt stung. I felt my stomach twist, my ears ringing as if someone had smashed a cymbal inside my skull. My hearing began to fold, like a theater curtain, closing slowly on the last act. And then, my lungs gave up. There's a moment when you know you've gone too far, and I felt it, the inhale that never came, the final heartbeat before stillness. Then, darkness. But not empty. The dark was alive, watching me, and I wasn't falling anymore. I was being carried. No pain, no panic, only awareness, and the strangest sense that everything I had ever called real was thin. The salt disappeared. The weight of the water vanished, and I realized I was floating, but not in water, in light. It wasn't sunlight. It was living, warm, golden, and humming like the inside of a heartbeat. Then he came, At first just a form, a silhouette inside glory. And then the presence grew closer, not just light, but authority. And when he looked at me, it was as if I had always been seen and never once been condemned. Eyes like fire, voice like stillness, hands that didn't move, but reached through my spirit. I wanted to weep, but I had no tears, because in that moment, I wasn't afraid. I was known, and the judge standing before me was also the one who bled for me. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The moment his presence came near, the light itself bowed. It wasn't the blinding kind of light. It was deeper than the sun. A light that saw through you, that remembered you. He stood in silence, still, not floating, not walking, just there. And yet, every cell in me responded, like it had waited for this moment since creation. I had no breath, but if I had, it would have left in awe. There was nothing casual about him. His eyes found mine, and in them I saw everything I had ever done, and everything I could have been. But not once, not even for a flicker, did he flinch. Eyes that saw everything get condemned. Nothing. He didn't reach out to save. He reached out to reveal. And when his hand touched my forehead, I didn't hear words. I received them, like lightning wrapped in silk. They moved through me without sound. You saw gain, now see cost. Then the ground beneath me gave way. Not physically, but spiritually. It was like my soul had been standing on a lie, and now truth pulled the floorboards off. My skin began to vibrate. Every part of me trembled, not in fear, but in revelation. And that's when I saw it. His hand still rested on me, but my spirit had already left his side. I was moving fast, but not forward, inward, as if being sucked into the root system of reality itself. I wasn't looking at visions. I was becoming them. The voice that had shaken mountains now whispered through my spirit, and each word became a doorway. Behind every doorway, a layer, a truth, a warning. And what I saw next, no market analyst, no politician, no AI model could ever predict, because this wasn't about trends. This was about judgment, and the first vision, it began with fire. The first thing I saw was myself, but not as I was in the light, as I had been seconds before I drowned, thrashing, alone, helpless in a paradise that had turned against me. But I wasn't inside the body this time. I was above it, watching. Then the scene widened, fast, like a drone pulling back. And suddenly, the ocean wasn't water. It was data, shimmering, liquid gold, full of numbers. Charts, tickers. The surface looked smooth, but beneath it, something was cracking. I saw men in high rises, sipping espresso, eyes locked on crypto charts. Phones buzzed, screens flashed, portfolios climbed, and they all wore the same look I once did, control, but beneath their feet, I could see it. The foundation they were standing on wasn't real. It pulsed like flesh. It breathed. Then the leady tickers on the buildings began to glitch. Letters scrambled, numbers reversed, and one by one, they started to melt, like wax in a furnace. Suddenly, a voice, not shouted, just placed inside me. It begins again, September 9th, 26. I turned. Wall Street was shaking, literally, like the earth itself was rejecting its weight. I saw breaking news banners flash across giant monitors. Market collapse imminent. Systems down. Currency corrupted. But no one ran. They just stared, as if they couldn't move. As if the lie had paralyzed them. And then I understood. The crash wasn't digital. It wasn't economic. It was spiritual. The systems we worship, profit, data, speed, they were temples, temples built on sand. And the tide wasn't coming. It had already risen. I saw it in their eyes. They were drowning too, but not in water, in deception. And Jesus whispered again, not with anger, but sorrow. What good is it to gain the whole world and lose the truth? I wanted to look away, but the next vision was already coming, and it would show me what was hiding beneath the collapse. And then the ground split beneath the collapse. Not physically, spiritually. I was pulled downward through layers of steel, asphalt, and digital noise, until I emerged into a world beneath the world. A blackened layer beneath global cities. It looked like the skeleton of civilization, corridors of shadow beneath trading floors, server farms, and government towers. And in that dark, they moved. Figures, formless, but not shapeless. They shifted like smoke, but their presence was heavy. You didn't see them with eyes. You felt them, in your bones. They were whispering, not to me, but through screens, through phones, through the mouths of boardroom leaders and faceless CEOs, through tweets and private Discord calls. And what they fed on wasn't blood. It was fear, greed, pride. Each compromise became a portal. Every time a man sold truth for influence, a gate opened, and one of them stepped through. I saw a young trader in Tokyo, eyes bloodshot, typing commands, and behind him, a shadow figure wrapped its tendrils around his spine, whispered into his ear. He nodded and pressed enter. Another coin pumped, another soul cracked. In London, a woman in a sleek suit pitched a decentralized trust model. Her words glowed with promise, but the creature behind her mouthed different words. Control, seize, twist. Then one figure stepped toward me, more distinct than the others. Clawed, massive, its mouth opened without lips, and it didn't scream, it commanded, burn it down. And with that, screens began to shatter. Currencies collapsed into fire. Cities blinked out like dying servers. I turned in horror, and then, his voice again. Jesus. But this time it wasn't soft. It was final. The darkness does not invade. It is invited. I looked up and saw an entire skyline pulsing. Not with light, but infection. The air turned thick. Sulfur, electric static. Like the atmosphere itself was rejecting what had been summoned. My soul felt like it was crawling. It wanted to escape my own skin. But I couldn't stop watching, because the next vision would take me into the heart of their temple. I was lifted, up through smoke and storm, into a space that shouldn't exist, but does. A boardroom, suspended in the sky. Its walls were glass, but reflected nothing. You could see out into nations, into economies, into lives, but nothing looked back in. The tables stretched endlessly, as if time itself had taken form and decided to sit, and seated around it were men and women whose faces you've seen, but not truly known. Tech billionaires, pharmaceutical giants, defense contractors, media executives, bankers whose net worth eclipses entire countries. But their mouths didn't move. They spoke in symbols, a hand gesture here, a tilted glass there, a nod, a coin spun on the table. Yet every symbol meant the same thing: destruction, not wild or reckless, strategic, calculated, elegant. One man, cloaked in designer silence, turned a coin over and over in his fingers. It shimmered with shifting holograms. On one side, a crown. On the other, a digital eye. No date, no value. Just the watcher. Control isn't coming. It's already here. But what chilled me wasn't their schemes. It was their confidence, their calm. as if the world's suffering was nothing more than data flow in a dashboard. And then he spoke again. Jesus. His voice cut through the room like thunder wrapped in mercy. The world you trusted was never yours. Those words didn't just expose them. They exposed me, because I had sat in rooms like this. Not as powerful, but as complicit. I had nodded at corruption when it benefited my wallet. I had laughed at suffering when it padded my stock. And now I stood in the cloud temple of the elite, and I saw what we'd built. A machine that consumes and keeps consuming. And I broke. Tears flooded my spirit, not from fear, but from shame. I helped build this. The table began to vanish. The glass fractured, and the boardroom collapsed beneath its own arrogance. But even in the fall, there was a flicker of light rising, and that light was next. Suddenly, the collapse faded. The glass boardroom dissolved into smoke, and in its place, a small home. Modest, dusty, walls worn by time, but filled with warmth. No luxury, no surveillance, just a table, a flickering oil lamp, and a family praying. A man, his hands calloused. A woman, her eyes closed, lips trembling. Two children, heads bowed, knees touching rough floorboards. They weren't asking for riches. They weren't streaming sermons or quoting trends. They were simply yielding. And from their prayers came light, not metaphor, literal, soft at first, then rising, pulsing, like heat waves from a furnace. The light moved outward, slowly pushing back the shadows that clung to their walls, and standing behind them was an angel, tall, silent, sword in hand. But what gripped me most was that it was weeping, not from sorrow, but from longing. Its blade shimmered, its wings were drawn in. It stood, ready, and yet it waited, because it was the prayers, not the sword, that held the line. Jesus whispered, "The prayers of the lowly bind kings in chains." And suddenly, I was lifted again. I saw homes like this one scattered across the earth. A one-room hut in Kenya, a clay chapel on a hill in Peru, a farmhouse in the American Midwest, where an old man knelt alone. Everywhere ordinary people, doing what the powerful had forgotten, submitting. Each prayer lit a flare, each flare joined another. And across the globe, lines of light rose like latticework, connecting, converging, holding back a flood. Then I heard it, children singing. The sound came through storm clouds, pure, unafraid. It carried the weight of heaven with the tone of lullabies. The air shifted. I could smell it, like incense and rain, like a temple and a harvest. The scent of something eternal. And in that moment, I saw what no empire could see. The future would not be saved by data or war, but by the hidden ones whose prayers ignited fire. The next vision would show what happens if that fire is ignored. I was standing between two doors, massive, towering far above me, like ancient gates forged from opposing eternities. The door to my left was scorched, iron black, edges burning red, the metal pulsing like it was alive. Smoke hissed beneath it, carrying sounds I couldn't unhear. Screams, sirens, the static hum of broken systems. Then the door began to open. And what I saw, cities ablaze, streets cracked open like fault lines, famines where storehouses once overflowed, children begging beside blinking ad screens, rivers dry, nations locked in digital warfare, and above them all, machines, cold, unblinking, efficient, artificial intelligence, directing the flow of food, news, even emotion. Humanity outsourced to its own reflection. And in its silence, suicide rose like smoke. I stepped back, heart pounding. Then the other door creaked open, softly. Golden light poured out like morning after a long night. And in it, I saw the impossible. Miracles, not staged or sold, but happening. Families restored. Fathers weeping as prodigals returned. Hospitals emptied by hands raised in prayer. A blind girl in India, laughing as her sight returned. Revival, not in cathedrals, but in alleyways, in prisons, in boardrooms, in places no one expected. Hope like oxygen. And standing between those doors was him, Jesus. He didn't look at me this time. He looked through me, past me, to you. And he said, what you choose today becomes your nation's tomorrow. Then everything shook. The visions collapsed into one final flash. A calendar, the numbers blurred, then sharpened. 9/9/2026, burned into the center, and a final whisper from somewhere between thunder and tears. On that day, a reckoning begins. Will they listen? The doors closed, and I was falling again. Falling fast, not into death this time, but return, suddenly, impact. Like my soul slammed into my body. The cold hit first, then pain, a stabbing, tearing fire in my chest. Like someone had dragged me back across the veil with bare hands. Monitors were screaming, voices shouting. A face, blurry, yelled, "He's back. We've got a pulse." I couldn't speak at first. My lungs burned, my ribs ached, and yet every part of me was screaming the same thing. "It's coming. Warn them." The doctor blinked. "You were gone for 3 minutes," he said. "Clinically dead." They ran more tests, hooked me up, scanned my brain, but nothing could explain the clarity in my voice, the urgency in my eyes. My family said I was hallucinating, dehydrated, delirious. My friends laughed when I told them. "The market's fine," one said. "You just need rest." But I couldn't rest. The visions wouldn't leave. The voice of Jesus echoed with every heartbeat, and the fire inside me grew hotter. So I wrote, I recorded, I told my story, even when they mocked, even when they rolled their eyes, because once you've stood in the presence of truth, silence becomes betrayal. I lost millions that year. The crash came for my coins, my assets, my name. But I gained something eternal, and now nothing else compares. I didn't expect much. I uploaded the video quietly, just my voice. No edits, no drama, one thumbnail, one title, one warning, 500 views. That was it. Until one comment stopped me cold. A woman wrote, "I was going to end my life today. Then I saw your video. You saved me." I wept, not because of her words, but because I knew the ripple had started. 3 days later, someone emailed me from Nairobi, a pastor. He'd translated the clip into Swahili and played it in a rural Kenyan church. They knelt as it ended, and revival began with 10 broken men on a concrete floor. Then came the message from Dubai, a hedge fund manager, anonymous, high-ranking. He wrote only, "I've built my life on sand. Will you pray with me?" From there, micro-movements formed, Telegram groups, underground prayer circles in trading forums, midnight Zooms in corporate boardrooms. Not everyone believed, but those who did burned with urgency. And I realized sometimes it only takes one death to birth 1,000 wake-ups. And I was no longer afraid to speak. This is not content. This is not entertainment. It's a warning. If you felt even a flicker of truth stir inside you, don't walk away unchanged. Comment your nation below. God is assigning watchers, people who will intercede for their land before the shaking begins. Share this with 3 people. especially those who trust money more than the maker. They won't expect it. But that's when seeds are planted. And if you haven't already, subscribe, ring the bell, not for algorithms, but to stay awake, because the date is not symbolic. It's not hypothetical. It's set, September 9th, 2026. Keep your lamp lit. The bridegroom comes at an hour we do not expect. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He give you eyes to see and ears to hear, before the noise of this world drowns out the whisper of heaven. May your heart be awakened before the shaking begins. May your home be covered, your mind made still, your spirit anchored in the one who cannot be moved. You are not watching this by accident. You were chosen to hear. Now walk in the light of what you've seen. In Jesus' name, Amen.